I am not a hoe. Please leave me alone.
She slid the Chanel bag across his desk like it was a grocery store receipt. I don't want it. Dayan Chase, 40 years old, worth $3 billion, never been told no by anything that breathed, looked up slowly. Janice. Don't. She held up one finger. One. You bought me a bag. You booked me a restaurant I can't pronounce. You sent flowers to my job 3 times my job, Dayan, and I smiled because I thought you were courting me. She laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. But last night you asked me to come to your hotel room, on a Tuesday, with no dinner, no conversation, just, she gestured at him, at all of him, this, like I should be grateful. He opened his mouth. I have a son, she said quietly. The quiet was worse than the volume. He is 5 years old, and he is the only reason I work the hours I work and smile at people I don't like and come home tired every single night. I do not have time, her voice caught. I do not have energy to be somebody. Thursday. The office was very still. I am not a hoe, Mr. Chase. She picked up her purse, her real purse, the one with the broken strap she'd been meaning to fix. I don't care how much you're worth. I don't care how fine you are. I don't care that half the women in Philadelphia would crawl across glass for one night with you. She walked to the door. Find one of them. She left. Dayan sat alone in his $3 billion office and felt, for the first time in his adult life, absolutely poor. Welcome to Midnight Romance, a place for stories about love, desire, and the choices that change us, told the way they actually feel. Comment where in the world you are watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. Now strap up, let's dive into this bombshell. She was 31 years old, raising a 5-year-old boy by herself, and she had exactly 0 time for nonsense. That was just her life. Michael woke up at 6. She woke up at 5, packed his lunch, ironed her blazer, dropped him at Ms. Carroll's by 7:30, and walked into the Harrington Hotel by 8 like she hadn't just done all of that before most people opened their eyes. She worked the front desk, smiled at strangers, solved problems that weren't her fault, said absolutely, let me help you with that to people who didn't say thank you. And then she went home, made dinner, gave Michael a bath, read him 2 pages of whatever book he was into that week, and did it all again the next day. No complaints, no audience, just her and her son and the life she was quietly, stubbornly building with her own 2 hands. That was the woman Dayan Chase walked in on. He came through the lobby doors on a Wednesday afternoon like the whole room was expecting him. Suit dark, watch quiet. The kind of man who doesn't need to be loud because everything around him already announces him. Janice looked up from her screen. She looked back down. That was it. That was the whole interaction. And that, apparently, was enough to ruin him. He came back Thursday, asked her name. She told him, professional, warm, the way she talked to every guest. He came back Friday. This time he lingered, asked how her day was going. She said fine. Asked if she had a favorite restaurant in the city. She smiled and said she didn't really have time for restaurants. He took that as a challenge. The bag came first. Chanel black, the kind that has a waiting list. It was sitting on the concierge desk when she got back from her lunch break, with a card that just said her name in clean handwriting. Her coworker was losing her mind. Janice looked at it for a long moment. Then she picked up the phone and called the hotel's guest services line, and had it sent back to his room before her break was even over. He showed up the next morning smiling like she hadn't just returned it. She had to respect it a little, just a little. The flowers came next, then a reservation at a restaurant she had genuinely never heard of, then a second bag, different color, like maybe she had a preference. She sent everything back, every single thing. Not because she didn't notice he was fine, she noticed, she had eyes. But she also had a son who needed new shoes, a bathroom faucet that had been dripping for 2 weeks, a savings account she was building dollar by dollar like she was stacking bricks with her bare hands. She didn't have room in her life for a man who was used to buying his way into things. And then he asked her to come to his hotel room. No dinner, no conversation, just a room number slipped across the desk on a piece of paper like it was the most normal thing in the world. She looked at the paper. She looked at him. And something in her went very, very still. She asked her manager for 15 minutes, took the elevator to the 4th floor, knocked on his door. He opened it surprised, happy even, like she had come to say yes. She had not come to say yes. She slid the note back across the threshold and looked him dead in his face. I don't want it. Dayan Chase, 40 years old, worth $3 billion, never been told no by anything that breathed, blinked. Janice. Don't. She held up one finger. One. You bought me a bag. You booked me a restaurant I can't pronounce. You sent flowers to my job 3 times my job, Dayan, and I smiled because I thought you were courting me. She laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. But then you slipped me a room number. No dinner, no conversation, just a number on a piece of paper like I should be grateful. He opened his mouth. I have a son. The quiet in her voice was worse than any volume. He is 5 years old, and he is the only reason I work the hours I work and smile at people I don't like and come home spent every single night. I do not have time. I do not have energy to be somebody. Thursday. The hallway was very still. I am not a hoe, Mr. Chase. She picked up her purse, her real purse, the one with the broken strap she kept meaning to fix. I don't care how much you're worth. I don't care how fine you are. I don't care that half the women in Philadelphia would crawl across glass for one night with you. She turned toward the elevator. Find one of them. She went back downstairs, fixed her blazer in the elevator mirror, walked back behind the front desk, and pulled up the next guest reservation on her screen like nothing happened. Her coworker stared at her. Janice just said, "Can you take the 3 o'clock checkout? I'm covering the phones." That night she gave Michael a bath, read him 2 pages of his dinosaur book, and turned off his lamp. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark for a little while. Then she blocked Dayan Chase on everything she had. Phone, email, LinkedIn, everything. She felt clean. Good even. Like she had just taken out very heavy trash. She did not think about him again. At least not until the call came. She heard Michael before she saw him. That was always how it was with 5-year-olds. You heard them first. The running, the laughing, the way they narrated everything they were doing out loud like the world needed a play-by-play. It was a Saturday. Janice had the day off, which almost never happened, and she had decided that meant the park. Michael had been asking about the park for 2 weeks, every single night. The park, Mommy. Can we go to the park? Mommy, the park. So they went to the park. She sat on the bench with her coffee going cold in her hand, watching him climb the jungle gym with the intensity of a man on a mission. He was small for his age, but he never acted like it. Always the first one to the top. Always the one going higher than he probably should. She almost told him to slow down. She almost did. She heard the other kids go quiet first. That was the thing nobody tells you. It's never the sound of the fall that gets you. It's the silence after. Children do not go quiet for nothing. Children are never quiet. She was on her feet before she understood why. He was at the bottom of the jungle gym. Face down, one Spider-Man sneaker half off his foot, not moving. Not moving. She did not remember running. She was just there on her knees in the wood chips, hands on his small shoulders, saying his name the way mothers say names when they are terrified and trying not to show it. He didn't answer. The ambulance came in 6 minutes. She counted. The hospital was loud and white, and everyone was moving fast, and nobody was telling her anything in plain English, and she kept having to ask people to slow down. Just slow down and tell me what is happening to my son. What is happening to my son? The neurosurgeon was a tall woman with kind eyes and terrible news. Subdural hematoma, blood pooling between his brain and his skull, pressure building. He needed surgery, not tomorrow, not in a few days. He needed surgery within 72 hours or they were looking at permanent damage. Or worse. She said or worse. The procedure, the doctor said carefully, is $100,000. Janice sat in the plastic chair, outside his room for a long time after that. She could hear the machines through the door, the steady beep of something keeping count, keeping watch. Michael was in there in a bed that was too big for him, tubes in his arm, Spider-Man sneakers still on his feet because nobody had thought to take them off. She stared at those sneakers through the small window in the door. She had bought them 3 weeks ago. He had picked them out himself, stood in the middle of the store with his whole face lit up like she had handed him the world. She called her mother. Her mother had $400. She called her sister had less. She called her bank. They told her what she already knew. She applied for 3 emergency medical loans on her phone in the hospital bathroom, hands shaking, auto-correcting words she had to retype twice. Then she sat back down in the plastic chair. And she prayed. Not the polished kind, not the kind with the right words in the right order. The kind that sounds like please, 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 over and over until it stops being a word and starts being just a sound, just breath, just a mother in a hallway with nothing left but asking. The call came at 11:47 that night. A woman from billing, soft voice, almost apologetic. Ms. Wilson, I'm calling to let you know that your son's procedure has been covered in full by an anonymous donor. Surgery is scheduled for 6 a.m. Janice didn't say anything for a long moment. I'm sorry, she said. Can you say that again? The woman said it again. She sat with the phone in her lap long after the call ended. $100,000. Anonymous. She looked at Michael through that little window again. The machine still beeping, the sneakers still on his feet. She didn't sleep that night. Not because she was scared anymore, though she was. She still was, but because something was sitting heavy in the back of her mind. Quiet, patient, waiting for her to look at it. Somebody had just paid $100,000 for her son. And she had no idea who. She told herself it didn't matter. What mattered was Michael. What mattered was 6 a.m. She was lying to herself and she knew it. Michael woke up on a Thursday asking for chicken nuggets. Not water, not his mom, chicken nuggets. Janice laughed so hard she cried. The nurse thought something was wrong. She had to wave her off and say, no, no, he's fine, that's just him. That is just exactly him. He stayed in the hospital for 4 more days after that. Observation, they called it, making sure everything was working the way it should. Janice slept in the chair next to his bed every single night, waking up every time he shifted, every time a machine made a sound she hadn't heard before. She didn't care, she would have slept on the floor. By the time they discharged him, Michael was already negotiating about screen time. She let him have whatever he wanted. Just this once. She got him settled at her mother's house. Easier than the apartment, more hands, more eyes. And then she sat in her car in the driveway and let herself breathe for the first time in a week. He was okay. He was okay. And then the other thing came back. She had tried to let it go, told herself it was a stranger, a philanthropist, some hospital program she hadn't known about. There were programs, right? People who donated to cases like Michael's. It happened. She almost believed it. She went back to the hospital the next morning, and asked to speak to someone in billing. The woman she met with was polite and careful, and kept using the word confidential like it was a shield. "I understand," Janice said, "but this is my son. Someone paid $100,000 for my son's life, and I need to know who." "Confidential," the woman said again. "Donor's request." Janice went home, found the hospital's main administrative line online, called it, got transferred 3 times, left 2 voicemails. She called the surgeon's office directly. The surgeon's assistant said she wasn't able to help with billing matters. She filed a formal inquiry, in writing, with her name and Michael's name and her contact information and a very calm, very clear explanation of why she was asking. 3 days passed. On the 4th day, a nurse called her, young voice, a little nervous. She said she probably shouldn't be calling. Janice said she understood. The nurse said she had seen the name on the original transfer authorization before it got routed to the confidential file. She said the name once. Then she hung up. Janice sat at her kitchen table with her phone face down in front of her. Dan Chase. She got up, washed the 2 dishes in her sink, dried them, put them away, wiped down the counter even though it was already clean. Then she sat back down. Dan Chase had paid $100,000 for a surgery for a child he had never met. For her son. For Michael, who still had a small scar above his left ear, and who had asked her this morning if Spider-Man ever got scared. She had said, "Yes, baby. Even Spider-Man gets scared sometimes." She unblocked his number. Sat there looking at it for a long time. She had been so clean about it, so decided. She had drawn that line and walked away from it without looking back, and it had felt right. It had felt like the truest thing she had done in a long time. And he had gone and done this. She called him. He picked up on the second ring. Like he was waiting, like he had been waiting for a while. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then she said, "Why?" Not a question, not really, just the word sitting there between them asking to be answered. He was quiet long enough that she thought maybe he was figuring out how to spin it, how to make it something it was, how to turn it into leverage the way men like him sometimes did, the way she had half expected. He didn't. He just said, "Because he's your son, and you were never supposed to carry that alone." Janice pressed her hand flat on the kitchen table. Looked at the wall. "You had no right," she said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. "I know," he said. "I blocked you everywhere. I know. I meant everything I said to you. I know that too." A pause. "I'm not calling that into question. I'm not Janice. I'm not trying to buy anything. I know that's what it looks like. I know." She didn't say anything. "I saw something about the accident," he said quietly. "I don't know how. Someone who works at the hotel mentioned it, and I couldn't not. I couldn't sit there and know and not do something." Another pause. "If you want to pay me back, I'll give you a payment plan. If you want to never speak to me again, I understand that too. I just needed him to be okay." The kitchen was very quiet. The faucet was still dripping. 2 weeks she kept meaning to fix it. "He asked for chicken nuggets," she said finally, when he woke up. She heard something shift in Dan's voice, something that hadn't been there before. "That sounds about right," he said. She almost smiled. She caught it before it got all the way out. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one, not an explanation, not a reason. Just I'm sorry for how I came at you. You told me exactly who you were and I didn't listen, and that was disrespectful. You deserved better than that." Janice looked at the wall for a long time. "I'm not a project," she said. "No," he said, "you're not. And I'm not impressed by money." "I know, that's actually," he stopped, started again. "That's actually the first thing I noticed about you." She let out a slow breath. "One date," he said. "Real dinner, real conversation. I'll pick you up, I'll bring you home, and if you never want to see me again after that, I will respect it completely. She looked at the dripping faucet. She looked at the door to the hallway where Michael's jacket was hanging on the hook she had put up herself with a drill she had borrowed from her neighbor. I'll think about it, she said. She hung up, sat in the quiet kitchen for a little while. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was carrying everything by herself. She wasn't sure what to do with that yet. But she didn't block him again. He picked her up in a Camry. Not a Bentley, not a Range Rover, not something with a driver and tinted windows and a man in a suit holding the door open. A Camry, navy blue, 2022. Clean inside but not detailed, there was a water bottle in the cup holder and a phone charger coiled around the gear shift and a receipt from a gas station folded in the console. Janice looked at all of it when she got in. She didn't say anything, but she noticed. He was wearing a simple shirt, dark pants, nothing that announced itself. He looked nervous. She had not expected that. Day and Chase, $3 billion, nervous in a Camry picking up a woman who had already told him no once. She found it oddly settling. You look nice, he said. Thank you, she said. He pulled out of her mother's driveway. She had dropped Michael off first, easier that way, less explaining to a 5-year-old, and neither of them said anything for a block or two. It wasn't uncomfortable. That surprised her too. The restaurant was in South Philly. Small. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and a handwritten menu board and old pictures on the wall that had been there so long they were part of the paint. Soul food, the real kind. He held the door. They got a corner table. The woman who seated them called Dayan baby and squeezed his arm, and he smiled like a different person entirely. My grandmother used to bring me here, he said when they sat down. Every Sunday after church, same table. Janice looked around. How old were you? 7, 8 until she passed. He said it simply, no performance around it. How old were you when she passed? 14. She looked at him across the table. 40 years old, $3 billion, nervous in a Camry, ordering the same thing he used to order at 7 years old in the same corner table his grandmother brought him to. She was starting to understand that there were several versions of this man, and she had only met one of them. They talked. Not the way people talk on first dates, performing, auditioning, saying the things that sound good. They talk the way people talk when they are tired of pretending and they just want to be known for a minute. He told her about growing up in North Philly, about his mother working doubles at the hospital, about the summer he was 12 and decided he was going to be rich, not wanted to be, decided, like it was a fact he was just waiting to catch up to. She told him about Michael's father, said it plainly, the way she had learned to say hard things. He left before Michael could walk, said he wasn't ready. She had nodded and closed the door and cried for 3 days and then got up and decided that was the last time she would cry about a man who chose to leave. Dayan listened, didn't try to fix it, didn't say anything about what Michael's father should have done. Just listened. Can I ask you something? She said. Yeah. The room number, she looked at him directly. What were you thinking? He didn't flinch. She respected that. I was thinking the way I always think, he said, which is that I want something so I go get it. He paused. I've been doing that my whole life with everything, business, women, all of it. You see a thing, you move toward it, you close. He shook his head slowly. I treated you like a deal. You did. I know. He looked at his hands on the table. Nobody had ever just handed my stuff back before, sent it back without a note, just returned it like it meant nothing. It did mean nothing. I know that now. He looked up. It scared me a little, if I'm honest. Janice tilted her head. Scared you? Yeah, he said it without embarrassment. I didn't know what to do with a woman who didn't want anything from me. I didn't have a move for that. She looked at him for a moment. Then she picked up her fork and went back to her food. That's the most honest thing you've said since I've known you, she said. I'm trying something new, he said. The food was good. The cornbread was the kind that made you close your eyes for a second. She closed her eyes for a second. He noticed and didn't say anything about it, and somehow that was exactly right. Her phone buzzed halfway through dessert. She glanced at it, Michael, FaceTime, and looked up at Dan. My son. Take it, he said immediately. She answered. Michael's face filled the screen, gap-toothed, wearing his dinosaur pajamas even though it was only 7:30, holding up a Lego structure that was impossible to identify. Mommy, look, he said, look what I made. What is it, baby? A spaceship. He turned it around. It looked nothing like a spaceship. And this part is where the pilot sits, and this part shoots the bad guys in this part. He stopped, squinted at the screen. Who's that? Janice turned the phone slightly. Dan gave a small wave. Michael stared at him with the unfiltered seriousness that only 5-year-olds can produce. What's your name? Michael said. Dan. Do you like spaceships? Dan leaned forward a little. Depends. Can that one actually shoot? Michael's whole face changed. Yes, he said. Look, and he started explaining the whole thing again from the beginning, louder this time, more detail, arms moving. Janice watched Dan watch her son. He was leaning on the table, completely still, completely in it, nodding at the right parts, asking a follow-up question about the pilot seat that sent Michael into a full 2-minute explanation. He wasn't performing. He was just there. She ended the call 10 minutes later, told Michael she loved him, told him to listen to Grandma. She put her phone down. Neither of them said anything for a moment. He's something, Dan said quietly. Yeah, she said, he is. They sat with that for a moment. The restaurant was warm. Someone in the kitchen was laughing at something. The old pictures on the wall watched them from every angle. Dan walked her to the car afterward. They stood outside it for a moment in the evening air, not quite ready to get in, not quite ready for the night to be over. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't push anything. He just said, thank you for coming. Like he meant it, like he understood what it had cost her to be here. She looked at him in the dim light, outside the restaurant his grandmother used to bring him to. You're different than I thought you were, she said. Which version did you think I was? The one who slips room numbers under doors. He nodded slowly. I'm trying to be less of him. She got in the car. He walked around to his side, started it up, pulled out into the street. They drove most of the way back in comfortable quiet, the city moving past the windows, the radio on low. She looked out at Philadelphia, her city, her streets, the place she had been building her life in one careful brick at a time, and felt something she hadn't felt in so long she almost didn't recognize it. Not fixed, not saved, not swept off anything. Just open. Like a window she had forgotten was there. He pulled into her mother's driveway, put it in park. Can I see you again? He said. She looked straight ahead for a moment. Then she said, yeah. Just that, just yeah. It was enough. 5 years. Michael was 10 now. Gap-toothed still, but the gaps were filling in. He was tall in the way boys get suddenly tall, like they forget to ask permission. He had opinions about everything, his shoes, his lunch, the correct way to load the dishwasher, which apparently Dan was doing wrong. He told him this regularly. Dan took the criticism seriously, which Michael respected deeply. They had gotten married on a Saturday in August. Backyard, twinkle lights, 30 people. Her best friend cried louder than anyone in attendance, including Janice's mother, which was impressive because Janice's mother had been crying since the rehearsal dinner. Janice had worn a dress she found at a boutique in Old City. Ivory, simple, nothing that tried too hard. She had done her own hair. Michael had been the ring bearer. He had taken the job with the gravity of a man carrying state secrets, walked down that aisle with his chin up and his eyes forward, and placed the pillow on the table like he was completing a mission. Then he sat in the front row and immediately started fidgeting. The house was in West Philly. 3 floors, a real backyard with a fence they picked out together, hardwood floors that creaked in the same spot every time, right at the top of the stairs, and neither of them had fixed it because Michael thought it was funny. It was move-in day. The truck had come and gone. The boxes were stacked in every room. Nothing was in the right place yet, and everything smelled like cardboard and possibility. Michael had already claimed his room, declared it perfect, and was currently somewhere on the 2nd floor making sounds that suggested he was testing the acoustics. Janice stood at the front door with the key in her hand. Dayan stood behind her with his hand resting on her waist, easy and certain, the way it always was now, like it had always been there, like it belonged. She put the key in the lock, turned it, pushed the door open. The house breathed them in. She stood in the doorway for a moment and thought about the hotel lobby, the Chanel bag sliding across a desk, the broken strap on her real purse, the room number on a piece of paper that had felt like an insult because it was. She thought about the parking lot at the hospital, the machines behind the door, the Spider-Man sneakers. She thought about a kitchen table and a dripping faucet, and a phone call she had almost not made. She thought about a navy blue Camry and a corner table, and a little boy explaining a Lego spaceship to a man who leaned in and actually listened. All of it had led here, to this doorway, to this man's hand on her waist, to the sound of her son running through the rooms of a house that belonged to all 3 of them. Dayan leaned down close to her ear. "You want to go in," he said, "or you want to stand here all day?" She laughed, walked in. Michael came thundering down the stairs the second he heard her voice, grabbed her hand, pulled her toward the kitchen to show her something he had found, a window seat, tucked into the wall, the kind you could curl up in with a book. "Mommy, look," he said, "it's perfect for you." She looked at it, looked at her son, looked back at Dayan, standing in the hallway of their house with his arms crossed, and a quiet smile on his face like he was watching something he had wanted for a long time finally come true. She sat down in the window seat. It fit her perfectly. Outside, Philadelphia went on the way it always had, loud and alive and completely unbothered. The street, the neighbors, the kids on bikes, the corner store with the sign that had been missing a letter for 3 years. Her city, her streets. Her home now in a way it had never quite been before. She looked out the window for a long moment. Here is what Janice Wilson knew, sitting in that window seat on move-in day, 10 years after she had started building her life with nothing but her own 2 hands and a baby who needed new shoes. She had not lowered her standard to get here. She had not pretended to want less than she deserved. She had not let loneliness talk her into settling, had not let a man's money make her forget what she was worth, had not confused being chosen by someone impressive with being loved by someone real. She had said no, clearly, without apology. And the right man had heard that no, and understood that it meant she was worth showing up for differently. Not every man who comes with gifts comes with respect. Not every man who wants you is ready to know you. And you will never find out the difference if you don't first know the difference in yourself. Janice knew. That was the thing. She had always known. She just refused to pretend otherwise. And that refusal, that one clear, quiet, non-negotiable refusal in a hotel hallway in downtown Philadelphia, had changed everything. Not because it attracted the right man, but because it proved to herself that she was the right woman. The rest followed from that. The rest always follows from that. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want the rest of Janice's world, more stories, more characters, more of this, subscribe. There is more coming. There is always more coming.